Alright, 8th graders, today we're talking about factoring again. This time though, we're going to have a number in front of our x squared value, and that ruins everything. It makes everything a lot more difficult, but have no fear, I'm going to show you how to find the factors, the two binomials that would multiply to make this trinomial with a number in front of the squared term. So the first thing that'll make your life a lot easier is checking to see if you can factor out the greatest common factor. So for example, on this first one, we can see that 5, 15, and 10 can all be divided by 5. So if I divide by 5 divided by 5 is 1x squared. I'm going to leave out the 1, don't need it. 15 divided by 5 is 3. And then 10 divided by 5 is 2. So now I have just an x squared. And so I can solve this in the way that we already know how. We can see what multiplies to make 2, what adds to make 3, and that would be 2 times 1. So I have to leave my 5 out here, but then I have x plus 2, x plus 1 to find 2 times 1 makes 2, so that, and then 2 plus 1 makes 3, and the 5 just has to stay because we just factored that out from the beginning. So another one that's very similar. I can divide all of these by 8 evenly, and so I get an 8 on the outside, x squared minus 7x plus 6. So now on this one I have to see what can I multiply to make 6 but add to get negative 7. So that means I need all negatives over here. Negative 1 times negative 6 adds to make negative 7 and multiplies to make 6. So x minus 1, x minus 6, all times 8 is our answer. Looking at the next set, I'm going to teach you what's called the box method for factoring. So it's going to be like a window pane, and let me zoom in here a little bit. Our first box gets ax squared in it, whatever it is. Our last box gets c in it, whatever that is. And then we have to find what goes into these two boxes. To find what goes into those two boxes, we do ax squared times c and find out what that equals. So if we're looking at this first one, that is 4x squared plus 13x plus 3. We know 4x squared goes here, 3 goes here, and then we have to multiply 4x squared times 3. So when I multiply 4x squared times 3, I get 12x squared. And then I'm comparing that, so I need to find what times what equals 12x squared and what plus what equals 13x. So I'm doing the same thing I was before. I'm finding what multiplies to make something and what adds to make something. you're always finding what adds to make 13. In this case, since we have a number in the front of the x squared, we have to multiply these two things together to get what we're multiplying to find our answer for. So I'm trying to figure out what multiplies to make 12. So 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4, and 1 and 12 are the only two that make 13. So 1x and 12x multiply to make 12x squared. 1x and 12x add up to make 13x. So I'm going to put 1x and 12x in my box. So you see how I got all the parts of my box? The next thing I'm going to do is now I'm going to divide out or factor out. So here and here I'm looking for what two things multiply to make 4x squared. So I have to look next door and below though, because if I picked 2x and 2x, 2 doesn't divide evenly out of 1x over here. So this is not a good option for this. So since this is a 1, it's likely that this is a 1x, and 1x times 4x makes 4x squared. So then I look over here. 1x times 1 would make 1x. 4x times 3 would make 12x. And then 3 times 1 makes 3. So everything works out here. And when I go to write my answers, I write my answer as 4x plus 1. So that was this part. And then this part times x plus 3. Notice I wrote x plus 3 instead of 1x plus 3. It's not wrong if you write 1x plus 3. Alright, so we're going to try this again using the box method. On this next one, we have 3x squared and 2. And so I know I have something plus something has to equal negative 7x. I got that from right here. And then something times something has to equal 3x squared times 2 is 6x squared. So I'm looking for a negative when I add and a positive when I multiply. So I know that has to be two negatives. And negative 1 and negative 6 make negative 7. And they work in both cases. So negative 1x, negative 6x. And now when I'm looking for my factors, here, looking down, I can divide by 3x. 3x times 1x would make 3x squared. Then I look over here. What do I multiply by 1x to get negative 1x? Just negative 1. And 3 times what makes negative 6? That'd be negative 2. And then I check negative 1 times negative 2 gives me 2, so I know that's right. So I write my answer as 1x minus 2 times 3x minus 1. Again, it doesn't matter if you write this one first or this one first. It just matters that they stay together. Alright, and the last one here. We have 2x squared and 5, which means blank plus blank equals 11x, and blank times blank equals 2x times 5 is 10x squared. So we get 10x times 1x, 10x plus 1x. And so now when I try to find what multiplies, the 2x would be over here, the 1x up here, because I can take a 2 out of 10 and get 5. And then 1x times what would make 1x? That would just be a 1. And a 1 times 5 makes 5, so I know I'm right. So here we go, we have 2x plus 1 times 1x plus 5. If I had more room, I would have written those mashed next to each other to show multiplication. On this next set, we're gonna keep on doing the same thing. So the box method of 2x squared minus 7. So on this one, I'm going to have something plus something equals negative 5x, and something times something equals negative 14x squared, because I multiply those two, negative 14x squared. And when I do that, I'll see 1 times 14, 2 times 7. So to get negative 5 when I add, I would do negative 7, positive 2. So when I factor, I have 2x times 1x, and then 1 times what would make negative 7, which would be negative 7. 2 times what would make 2. 1 times negative 7 makes negative 7. So my final answer is x plus 1, 2x minus 7. If you're attempting not to do the box method, it is likely you're going to get these wrong, unfortunately. Alright, 6x squared minus 12. And then I know that I'm looking for blank plus blank equals 1. And when I multiply these, I'm looking for negative 72x squared. So blank times blank equals negative 72x squared. So to get negative 72, I am going to do 1 and 72, 2 and 36, 3 and 24, 6 and 12, 9 and 8. When we do 8 and 9, we can definitely make positive 1 if the 9's positive. So So I need negative 8x and 9x. It also doesn't matter which spot you put the negative 8 or the 9. You would end up factoring correctly either way. So 3x can go into both 6 and 9. And so that makes this a 2x. 2x times what makes negative 8? Negative 4. And then 3x times what makes negative 9? Would be 3. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. So 2x plus 3, 3x minus 4 is my final answer. And then on this last one, we have 4x squared minus 5. And on this one, and now blank plus blank equals negative 19. And blank times blank equals negative 20 x squared, because 4x times negative 5 is negative 20. To get negative 20 when you multiply and negative 19 when you add, negative 20x times 1x, negative 20x plus 1x. So when I go to factor, I can pull 4x out of 4 and negative 20, which leaves me 1x here. 4 times what makes negative 20, that'd be negative 5. 1x times 1 makes 1x. 1 times negative 5 makes negative 5. So my answer here is 4x plus 1, 1x minus 5. Alright, I'm going to have you guys try this next set of 6. You're using the box method. At least set up the box, put in the middle, the last, and then you're saying what plus what equals the middle term, and what times what equals a times c. So in this case, 5n squared, 5n squared plus 10, which would be 50n squared. And see if you can find the two things that go add to make 15 and multiply to make 50. On the bottom of this page, we have 2 more solve the equations. So on these, we are going to use the box method again. So we get 4x squared and 3. So we're looking for 12x squared when we multiply, 8x when we add, 1 and 12, 2 and 6. 2 and 6 would work. So I'm going to fill in 6x and 2x. And I would have 2x here, 2x here, and I would get 3 and 1. So I get 2x plus 3 times 2x plus 1 equals 0. And to solve the equation, I am really just looking for what's going to make each of these parentheses 0. But I can do that by saying 2x plus 3 equals 0 and solving it, and 2x plus 1 equals 0 and solving it. So I would subtract 3. 2x equals negative 3, divide by 2. So x equals negative 3/2. And also x equals negative 1/2. So it's just that extra step of solving to see what makes 0. Fill in what would equal 0. And then on number 9, the area of the surface of the trampoline is equal to twice its perimeter. Find the dimensions of the trampoline. So the area is 4x times x plus 6 equals twice the perimeter. 2 times 4x plus 4x plus x plus 6 plus x plus 6. So if I multiplied these, I'd get 4x squared plus 24x equals 4, 8, 9, 10. 10x plus 12, which would actually be 20x plus 24 after I multiplied by 2. So here, again, we need to solve this, make it say equal 0. When in doubt on quadratics, you're making them say 0. And then subtract 24. So we have 4x squared plus 4x minus 24 equals 0. And now we can find the dimensions because we can do the box method. But actually first I can divide out the GCF. I didn't think to check for that first, which was a mistake. If I divide out the GCF first, I get x squared plus x minus 6. And to multiply to get 6, I would have 1 and 6, 2 and 3. And if the 2 is negative and the 3 is positive, I would get 1 here. So I have x minus 2, x plus 3. Now, the only thing that makes sense, so x couldn't be a negative number because that would mean it was negative feet on one side. And since this x would be negative 3 to make it equal 0, that's out. But this one is a 2. So 4 times 2 is 8 feet, and 2 plus 6 is also 8 feet. It's a square. The dimensions of the trampoline are 8 feet by 8 feet. Alright, try those questions that were up above this one, as well as number 8. And we will go over them in class tomorrow. Have a great night.